Good Tuesday morning, Patriots, and welcome back to O'Connor's Right Stand. I'm your host, John O'Connor, software programmer by day, conservative truth seeker by night. How was everyone's weekend? Mine was productive. Spent time working on the podcast, caught some Major League Baseball and some NASCAR, and watched the UNC football game. Also managed to get in about 13 miles of walking, which felt great to get outside and just stay active. Speaking of changes, I mentioned we're coming to the podcast. They're now underway. The first thing you'll notice is my new website at o'connorsrightstand.com. I'd really appreciate it if you could check it out and let me know what you think. Nothing's finalized, so if you have suggestions on what you'd like to see, and it's in the very beginning stages of designing it, shoot me an email at o'connorsrightstand@gmail.com or hit me up on X at o'connorstan. There are a lot of changes coming, but I'm only one person, and between work, a wedding, spending time with my lovely fiance, and working on the podcast, I'm really putting in some grueling hours. Not looking for a pity party or anything, but when I want to make a change to something, I just somehow uncover 10 more things that I need to look at. So just bear with me, and these changes will be coming. Oh, and by the way, quick correction from Thursday. Turns out I steered you wrong about On Patrol Live. The show wasn't actually live as I expected this weekend or past weekend. The cast was in Colorado for an appearance at ConvicCon. So, my apologies if you tuned in based on my recommendation. They should be back to live episodes this weekend, so I know I'll be watching. Today, we're diving into the absolute circus that was RFK Jr.'s Senate hearing this week. Patriots, I watched this entire hearing, and let me tell you, it was better than any comedy show you'll see on TV. If I wasn't on a low-carb diet, I would have had some popcorn out for this. We had Democrats melting down like snowflakes in July, throwing tantrums about baby onesies, and getting absolutely demolished by a man who came prepared for war. This wasn't just a hearing. This was a masterclass in how to handle unhinged Democrats who've been drunk on swamp water for decades. RFK Jr. didn't just defend himself. He went on the offensive and exposed these frauds for what they really are. Ready to see what happens when someone with actual backbone faces the DC establishment? The Right Stand starts now. Patriots, Thursday's Senate Finance Committee hearing with RFK Jr. was pure Democratic performance art. 3 hours of meltdowns, tantrums, and theatrical outrage while Kennedy calmly destroyed their arguments one by one. From the start, Ranking Member Ron Wyden tried to get Kennedy sworn in under oath, claiming he has a history of lying. This from the party that told us Hunter's laptop was Russian disinformation and men can get pregnant. Chairman Crapo just shut that down immediately. What followed was beautiful to watch. Democrats having collective nervous breakdowns while Kennedy exposed them as Big Pharma's bought and paid for attack dogs. They came prepared for typical Washington hearing, where they'd berate a nominee, who would apologize, and then grovel. Instead, they got someone who fought back with facts. The contrast was stunning. On one side, you had Kennedy calmly presenting data about America's health crisis. On the other, you had grown adults having emotional meltdowns about baby clothes and waving toy pins around like they were in preschool. It was psychotic. Let's start with Senator Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren from Massachusetts. Warren came for RFK Jr., claiming he had taken away COVID vaccines from people, putting on this dramatic performance for the cameras. Kennedy calmly explained that he wasn't taking vaccines away from anyone. People can still get the COVID vaccines. He just changed the guidelines so they're only recommended for people who actually need them, like adults over 65 and those with medical conditions. Warren kept interrupting him, clearly not interested in hearing the answer. She just wanted her soundbite for MSNBC. But then Kennedy dropped the nuclear bomb. I know you've taken $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies, Senator. Boom. Warren, who loves to play champion of the little people fighting big corporations, just got exposed as Big Pharma's favorite senator. $855,000 from the very companies she pretends to fight against. Warren had no response. Kennedy asked her point blank, "Do you want me to recommend a product for which there is no clinical data to the people?" Of course, Warren couldn't answer, because admitting the truth would destroy her entire narrative. If Warren's meltdown was so bad, Bernie Sanders topped it with what I'm calling Onesiegate. A sitting United States senator spent his time grilling Kennedy about baby clothes. Baby clothes. Sanders was losing his mind over onesies that Kennedy's former organization had sold with slogans like unvaxxed, unafraid. Sanders was demanding Kennedy disavow baby onesies like they were weapons of mass destruction. This is Bernie Sanders, who honeymoons in the Soviet Union and praises communist dictatorships, but baby onesies with medical freedom messages, that's where he draws the line? The same guy who wants to destroy capitalism is triggered by baby clothes promoting parental choice. The internet had a field day with Bernie's onesie obsession. One tweet perfectly captured the absurdity. RFK Jr. is such a quack. You must listen to the real scientists, like the ones who made us put on a mask as we entered a restaurant, walk 10 feet to a table, and then take it off as soon as we sat down. That's the level of science these Democrats want us to trust. When Sanders tried to imply that Big Pharma was supporting Kennedy's presidential campaign, Kennedy just laughed. Are you saying the pharmaceutical industry supported my presidential campaign? Sanders immediately backed off, because even he realized how ridiculous he sounded. The starfish pin incident was peak Democratic insanity. Senator Ben Ray Lujan from New Mexico brought a starfish pin to a congressional hearing and used it as a prop, telling Kennedy, "I'm sorry you're not worthy of this nice little pin. I was going to give it to you today, but I don't think you deserve it." A grown man, elected to represent New Mexico, playing with toy pins during a hearing about America's health policy. This is what the Democratic Party has become: a daycare center for emotionally unstable adults. The audience literally started laughing, and it got so bad he had to ask the chairman to tell people to stop. A United States senator needed protection from laughter because his performance was so ridiculous. While Americans are dying from chronic disease and our children are sicker than ever, the senator is playing with starfish pins. That tells you everything about the Democratic priorities. Senator Maria Cantwell called Kennedy a charlatan, defending an industry that's paid billions in criminal fines for lying about their products. The same companies that created the opioid crisis and are now being defended by Democrats who take their money. The real revelation came when Senator Mark Warner tried a gotcha about COVID deaths. Kennedy's honest response: he didn't know the exact number because the data is unreliable. Warner went ballistic. The Secretary of Health and Human Services doesn't know how many people died from COVID? How can you be that ignorant? But Kennedy is absolutely right. Nobody knows how many died from COVID versus with COVID. Motorcycle accident victims were counted as COVID deaths if they tested positive. People with multiple serious health conditions who died while having COVID were counted as COVID deaths. The CDC's data collection was so compromised, we genuinely don't have reliable numbers right now. Kennedy called it a chaos of data. Exactly what it was. He told the truth even when politically inconvenient. That's real leadership. Admitting when data is compromised rather than pretending we have certainty where none exists. This moment perfectly captured the entire hearing. Democrats demanding Kennedy lie to make them feel better, while Kennedy insisted on telling uncomfortable truths. They want him to parrot Big Pharma talking points, but he's committed to actual science. What was refreshing was watching Kennedy refuse to play defense. He didn't just respond to attacks. He went on offense and exposed the hypocrisy of his accusers. When Senator Michael Bennet tried to lecture him, Kennedy fired back. "Senator, you've sat in that chair for 25 years, while chronic disease of our children went up to 76%, and you said nothing. You never asked why it's happening. Today, for the first time in 20 years, we've learned that infant mortality has increased in our country." That shut Bennett up real quick. For decades, these senators have watched American children get sicker while taking money from the companies profiting from that sickness. Autism rates, childhood diabetes, obesity, allergies, all skyrocketing while these senators did nothing but cash Big Pharma's checks. When Raphael Warnock tried to blame Kennedy for CDC violence, Kennedy turned the tables. Are you complicit in the assassination attempts on President Trump? Warnock had no response, because Democrats spent years calling Trump Hitler, then act shocked when someone tries to kill him. When Senator Maggie Hassan tried to attack him, Kennedy called out for making stuff up to scare people and accused her of crazy talk. When Luan tried his starfish pin stunt, Kennedy told him he was speaking gibberish and not understanding how the world works. This is what we need more of in Washington. People who fight back against the swamp instead of trying to be polite while being attacked with lies. Democrats attacked Kennedy's firing of the CDC director Susan Monterez, but Kennedy defended it by quoting his father. Progress is a nice word, but change is its motivator, and change has its enemies. Kennedy fired Monterez because she refused to fire officials who weren't doing their jobs. When Elizabeth Warren defended Monterez, Kennedy exposed her hypocrisy. Warren herself had voted against confirming Monterez in the first place. Over 1,000 health officials signed a letter demanding Kennedy's resignation. Good! These are the same officials who gave us the disastrous COVID response. Kennedy is clearing house, and the establishment is terrified. Throughout the hearing, Kennedy exposed the real corruption. Every senator on that committee takes money from Big Pharma while lecturing him about vaccine safety. The pharmaceutical industry has more lobbyists than there are members of Congress. These senators are financially dependent on the companies they are supposed to regulate. Kennedy is the only person in that room who isn't on Big Pharma's payroll. Throughout this hearing, Kennedy made one point crystal clear. Being pro-medicine doesn't mean accepting everything pharmaceutical companies produce without question. I'm pro-medicine, but I understand some medicines harm people. Some of them have risks. And the same is true with vaccines. And I quote, "This is basic common sense. Every medical intervention has risks and benefits. The question is whether those risks and benefits are being honestly communicated to the American people." Kennedy revealed something shocking during the hearing. The Biden administration had manipulated the public presentation of data about the controversial abortion drug mifepristone. They were literally hiding safety data from the American people to protect a pharmaceutical product. This is exactly the kind of corruption Kennedy is trying to root out. Health agencies should serve the American people, not pharmaceutical companies. They should provide honest information about risks and benefits, not act as marketing departments for drug companies. Kennedy also addressed the chronic disease epidemic that has been ignored for decades. American children have the highest rates of autism, diabetes, obesity, and allergies in the developed world. Instead of investigating why this is happening, previous administrations just accepted it as normal. Kennedy is asking the obvious question. What's different about America that's making our children so sick? Is it our food supply, our vaccine schedule, environmental toxins? These are legitimate scientific questions, but Democrats don't want them investigated because the answers might threaten their donors. The hearing wasn't just Democrats attacking Kennedy. He also faced tough questions from Republican senators, particularly Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, who's a physician. This created an interesting dynamic where even some Republicans who confirmed Kennedy were expressing concerns. Cassidy and other GOP senators tried to set up what looked like a trap by praising Trump's Operation Warp Speed while questioning Kennedy's current vaccine policies. They were essentially asking, how can you support Trump's vaccine program while being skeptical of vaccines now? Kennedy handled this brilliantly. He acknowledged that Operation Warp Speed deserved credit and that vaccines likely saved lives when they matched the original virus strain. That particular vaccine perfectly matched the virus as it was at the time, Kennedy explained. But he also pointed out that viruses mutate, circumstances change, and health policy should adapt to new realities rather than being frozen in time. Cassidy pushed back, showing Kennedy a social media post from conservative commentator Eric Erickson, whose wife with stage 4 lung cancer was having trouble getting the COVID vaccine under the new guidelines. Kennedy admitted it was wrong that people were being denied vaccines they wanted. But here's the key difference. Kennedy isn't banning vaccines. He's changing recommendations so they're based on actual medical need rather than blanket mandates. People who want the vaccines can still get them. They're just not being pushed on everyone regardless of their risk profile. The Republican questioning was more substantive than the Democratic hysteria, but it showed that even within the GOP, there are concerns about how far Kennedy should go in reforming health agencies. What was fascinating about this hearing was watching Democrats play to the cameras rather than actually engaging with Kennedy's arguments. They weren't trying to have substantive policy discussion. They were creating soundbites for MSNBC and CNN. Warren's performance was particularly obvious. She kept talking over Kennedy, not because she didn't want to hear his answers, but because she wanted to control the narrative. She needed her dramatic moment of confronting Kennedy, regardless of whether her accusations were true. The whole hearing felt like political theater designed for social media clips, rather than serious governance. Democrats would ask loaded questions, then interrupt Kennedy's responses to get their talking points on record. They weren't interested in learning anything. They were interested in generating outrage content for their base. Meanwhile, Kennedy kept trying to have actual policy discussions about chronic disease rates, regulatory capture, and scientific integrity. But Democrats weren't interested in governing. They were interested in theater. This dynamic perfectly encapsulates what's wrong with Washington. Democrats are more concerned with their media coverage than with actually solving the problems. They'd rather perform outrage than engage with the substance of America's health crisis. After the hearing, President Trump backed Kennedy perfectly. I like the fact that he's different. He's a very good person. He means very well, and he's got some little different ideas. I heard he did very well today, and I end quote. Exactly right. We need different ideas because the same old ideas have given us the sickest population in the developed world. Vice President J.D. Vance also provided air support. When I see all these senators trying to lecture Bobby Kennedy, all I can think is, you all support off-label, untested, and irreversible hormonal therapies for children, mutilating our kids and enriching Big Pharma. You're full of blank, and everyone knows it. I put the blank in there. Perfect. These same Democrats lecturing Kennedy about child safety support, experimental hormone treatments for confused children. Patriots, this hearing was a gift because it revealed exactly who these senators work for. Democrats spent 3 hours defending pharmaceutical companies while attacking the person trying to hold those companies accountable. Kennedy didn't just survive, he dominated. He exposed Democrats as Big Pharma's bought and paid for attack dogs, while showing what real leadership looks like. The swamp is terrified because Kennedy represents everything they hate: independence, integrity, and willingness to put American health ahead of corporate profits. Well, keep fighting, patriots. When the swamp attacks this viciously, you know you're over the target. That's a wrap for this episode of O'Connor's Right Stand. Share it with someone who needs to hear the truth. And as always, I always appreciate you joining me. Add me on X at O'Connor Stand and like or subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to head on over to o'connorsrightstand.com and give me your opinions. Really want to know. Remember, when Democrats melt down over baby onesies and starfish pins, you know you've lost the argument. This is John O'Connor, signing off. Until next time, Patriots.